Here in America, we take our freedom for granted. Freedom to speak our minds, to go wherever we want to worship as we please, to choose our own leaders. Yes, in the United States, we take all these other freedoms. Take these things for granted, could only dream of them. The 1964 Tournament of Roses, its theme, Symbols of Freedom, was over now. But in the heart of one foreign-born girl, it would live forever. Last night, New Year's Eve, she'd been one of the spectators watching the floats being prepared, and had thrilled to the unexpected visit of a man who had become the living symbol of freedom for the whole world. Had seen Rose Queen Nancy Kneeland and President Bedell of the Tournament of Roses Association greet former President Eisenhower and his First Lady, the beloved Ike and Mamie, who then moved on to admire the handiwork of some of the hundreds of dedicated young people who worked all night covering every float completely with fresh flowers and living foliage. Mrs. Eisenhower asks if she may fasten one of the flowers on the float and provides a memorable moment for the spectators, herself, and her husband. There are thousands of orchids in this building tonight, but a very special one for Mrs. Eisenhower. The young man is happy he obeyed that impulse. So are his co-workers on the float. Dwight D. Eisenhower, the man who spearheaded the army which set Europe free and became one of the most beloved presidents of all time. Ike and Mamie, loved and honored by the American people. New Year's Day 1964 dawned brilliantly clear in Pasadena, and the California sun quickly warmed the many thousands of spectators who had lined the streets during the night, waiting patiently for the greatest pageant in America to begin. Outside Tournament House on Orange Grove Avenue, General and Mrs. Eisenhower were getting ready to start the parade. For many years, every parade has had its Grand Marshal. And this year, the Grand Marshal was America's #1 private citizen. On the street, patient thousands, and via television the whole nation, watched the hand that had launched the Normandy invasion signal, "Let the parade begin." Calvin McLean and his trumpeters are followed by the 30 riders of the Long Beach Mounted Police, carrying the masked colors of Old Glory. One of the great traditions of the Rose Parade is its equestrian units. Proud riders on superb horses, unsurpassed for perfect matching and grooming anywhere in the world. The 75th Annual Tournament of Roses. The Valley Hunt Club recalls that first parade in 1890 with this tally-ho coach that was once owned by the famous Lucky Baldwin of Rancho Santa Anita. Another great tradition of the parade is the appearance of the United States Marine Band. In their dress uniforms, 113 strong, musicians from San Diego, Camp Pendleton, El Toro, and the Barstow Marine bases honor Grand Marshal of today's parade, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces as the 34th President of the United States. Last night, she had been almost close enough to touch him. This great American who has dedicated his life to the cause of freedom. For many years, many men and women of eminence have been Grand Marshals of the parade, but none who has held so high a place in the hearts of the whole world as this man. Ike and Mamie, Americans. Serving as his guard of honor ride the famous mounted lancers of the Moolah Shrine Temple of St. Louis. Symbols of Freedom, the theme banner for this year's parade, is followed by the Pasadena City College Lancer Band, marching for the 34th consecutive year as the official Tournament of Roses band. president of the 75th Annual Tournament of Roses, business and civic leader Hillis M. Bedell, his wife Dorothy, and their family. An unforgettable day for all of them. And now, Her Majesty, the Queen of the Rose Tournament, surrounded by her 6 lovely princesses, seated on pathways of white chrysanthemums and holding rose bouquets. In the seat of honor, Queen Nancy Kneeland, chosen from over 2,600 Pasadena City College co-eds. And followed by Pasadena's Mayor Clarence Oakley and his wife Esther, who have worked long and tirelessly for this great day. The University of Illinois football band, 177 strong, dressed in the school colors of orange and blue, will also march later in the day at the 50th Rose Bowl football game. On the float entered by the Big Ten and the University of Illinois, the 10-foot figure of Chief Illini is almost hidden by pennants and pom-pom girls chanting, "We're loyal to you, Illinois." Its title, Freedom to Win. And they did. Illinois, land of Lincoln, where many of America's freedoms have their roots. The gigantic figure of Lincoln the rail splitter is realized in flowers from the color tones of the face, carnation petals, to his boots done in black croton leaves. Another equestrian unit, led by Edna Fagan, 5 splendid riders on Palomino horses bedecked with silver. And now sailing down the street of flowers comes a ship 55 feet long, representing freedom of the seas, reminding the world that the city of Los Angeles, born without a natural seaport, built its own harbor, one of the finest in the world. The mermaids are local attractions too. On their beautiful black and white pinto horses, the Davis family, ranchers and trail riders. The Chevrolet division of General Motors float, Freedom of the Arts, is a fairyland of maidenhair fern, chrysanthemums, vanda orchids, narcissus petals, lilies of the valley, and oh yes, the goddess Diana and the other young goddesses from the local scene. And roses, the parade symbol for 75 years. Pretty majorettes are a tradition of the parade too, and the University of Washington is not one to let the tradition or a baton down. The University of Washington Marching Band, 134 musicians representing the university and the state of Washington, march as ambassadors of good cheer on this New Year's Day, leading the way for the AAWU and the University of Washington float, Freedom of Sports and Learning, with its typical representatives of the evergreen state, including a Washington Husky. Hi, fella. And the symbols of college sport and learning. The state of Washington's float proclaims this is the year, the 75th year, that this scenic paradise with its natural beauties, some of whom even wink at you as they go by, has been a State of the Union, coinciding nicely with the 75th year of the Tournament of Roses. TV star Rex Allen rides a mount that has appeared in many Western film epics. Happy New Year to you, too. A different kind of freedom is pictured here, cutting the apron strings. Youthful America taking the big step from under the parental wing as it goes off to college. Covered with 100,000 blooms, this float is a student project of the California State Polytechnic College. Palomino horses originated in Spain and have long symbolized California's Spanish background. Dr. Sam Montgomery is riding his national champion Palomino Parade Mount. The American Beauty, entered and built by citizens of the city of Downey, with some of its loveliest daughters honoring the American Beauty, the Statue of Liberty. A symbol of freedom that has inspired the whole world. Giving a musical salute to another distinguished soldier, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, are 100 musicians of the 6th Army Band. The governor's trophy this year went to San Francisco's float representing Padre Serra, father of old California, bestowing blessings on a group of Indians before golden mission bells. A scene from our early history. And a girl from a far country muses on the symbol of Christianity that was brought to California so long ago by the Franciscan fathers. Two riders from Oregon, the Lyle Cobbs, precede a different kind of equestrian scene. The traditional race between the doctor and the stork. Horse, carriage, stork, house, and the platform itself are all of different colored chrysanthemums. San Gabriel's entry is titled Freedom to Care. Doc Vail remembers that era well. Nearly 90 years old and still riding at the head of his group in the Rose Parade. By contrast, Lakewood's Fancy Free is a scene dedicated to the flower of youth, featuring 5 of California's most beautiful girls, with Miss California herself at the apex. Beauty of face and form at the exquisite moment when it's most fancy-free, enshrined in the beauty of imagination realized in flowers. From Berkeley High School comes one of Northern California's outstanding bands to help Southern California welcome the new year. And right behind these eager scholars, what do we find but a scene called playing hooky? Fine thing. Blissful fisherman, relentless truant officer, merciless school teacher. Skylarking pupils. Does it all take you back? This idyllic scene, entered by the Dr. Pepper Company, is winner of the President's Trophy. George Putnam, popular television news commentator, wishes us Happy New Year. Look, here comes a real cute one based on one of your favorite comic strips. It's called Security, a charming entry from South Pasadena. Linus with the blanket that makes him feel secure. And the dog Snoopy asleep on his kennel. All but his tail. Following these humorous entries, we're back to symbols of freedom in the deepest meaning of the word. Abraham Lincoln giving his Gettysburg Address. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Words that have inspired the world. A prize-winning entry from Helms Bakeries. From our southern border city of Calexico comes this pretty miss, and the Calexico High School Bulldog Marching Band. The international trophy winner, Mexico's beautiful float Independencia. 6 lovely girls surround an angel from the column of independence in Mexico City. Behind them, a symbol to all Latin America of its hard-won freedom, is a gigantic flag of Mexico in flowers. What's this, an Arabian? 6 Arabians, horses that is. And here we have a scene from America's own struggle for freedom. The shot heard round the world, Minutemen and Redcoats at Concord Bridge, a thrilling entry from the Pasadena City Schools. Horses of storybook beauty, an integral part of the Tournament of Roses. They're followed by the Judge's Special Trophy winner, entered by C's Candy Shops. The famous Beverly Hillbillies, complete with dogs, pigs, chickens, duck, cat, and wheezing car, all done in flowers, remind us that one of our most precious freedoms is the freedom to laugh. The Toppers Band, sponsored by the Pasadena Mutual Savings and Loan. Top hat, white tie, and tails is their working costume, though the majorette's scantier attire is more to be envied on this warm January morning. This lovely float salutes the land of Greece, where political freedom was born. Entered by the city of Arcadia, the Winged Victory, 5 Grecian maidens, and 10,000 red roses pay tribute to the cradle of freedom and to Arcadia's sister city of Tripolis. From Greece to Rome, where Cleopatra smiled as the coveted Freedom Wreath was fought for by enslaved gladiators and lions stalked the arena. 250,000 blooms, 24 people, and 2 live lions appear on this entry from Portland, Oregon. And now we see a dramatic entry from the Farmers Insurance Group representing Presidents Eisenhower, Kennedy, Washington, Lincoln, and Franklin D. Roosevelt. Every one of them a symbol of freedom to the whole world. Snappy majorettes come from faraway Prince George, Virginia, where the Prince George High School Royal Band was chosen to represent the Eastern Seaboard. The pursuit of happiness, the crown of our freedoms, depicted in shades of white, pink, lavender, orchid, and the red of American Beauty roses. Riding this float are Miss Glendale and the lovely ladies of her court, and the one thing necessary to complete their happiness, a bridegroom. Here's another American hero on Sierra Madre's charming float covered with 175,000 blooms. Paul Revere crying, "The British are coming." And what's this? It's not the British at all, but an American covered wagon drawn by 8 Clydesdale horses. Westward ho from the city of St. Louis, famed jumping off place for the great migration west, pursued by Indians. And also pursued by the Southgate City Youth Band, red-jacketed braves doing an Indian snake dance as the tribe cheers them on. Following their youth band are some of Southgate's leading mermaids on its imaginative entry, Free in the Sea. Daffodils, calendulas, Vanda orchids, and girls. A lovely combination. And here comes an entry guaranteed to delight the young in heart of all ages. Quaker Oats, Freedom of Fantasy. Here we have the dragon telling the children a story, and that's a switch. I bet the dragon kills Sir Lancelot, the way he tells it. But the children don't mind, not even the captive princess in the tower, or the gallant knight at its foot. More golden palominos, jumping for joy. A dazzling float from the City of Commerce reminds us that the 4th of July is the day we declared our independence and began to win our freedom. From Tennessee come these charming majorettes and 120 musicians. The Isaac Litton High School Marching Band from Nashville, one of the greatest. Commemorating California's own struggle for freedom is this entry from Montebello, site of the final battle for independence, the result of which assured the bear-flagged state its place in the Union. Thousands of orchids and roses appear on this float. Look, here comes a real cowboy. Monty Montana, champion roper. And here are youngsters selling lemonade, a boy selling newspapers, and a soapbox derby winner, all demonstrating one of our most cherished freedoms, freedom of enterprise, an entry by Market Basket. The world's greatest Tennessee walking horse, Sun's Delight, is ridden by his famous trainer, Sam Pascal, followed by owners Fraser and Nancy Eskew of Kentucky. This float, with its cornucopia of golden coins labeled Industry, Trade, and Business, represents freedom from want, entered by the city of Torrance, which abounds in prosperity, roses, orchids, gladiolas, and pretty girls. From Mount Miguel High School in San Diego comes their fine band and this charming miss. Smartly they lead San Diego's entry, Freedom of Expression, Will Shakespeare at the prow. Behind him a scene from Romeo and Juliet on a flowered replica of San Diego's Old Globe Theater. One of the most famous symbols of our freedom, the Spirit of 76. Guarded by an American eagle, the patriotic pipe and drum trio march out of the past, recreated in authentic detail by Union Oil. With flowers, grapes, and lovely girls, neighboring Altadena celebrates our California heritage and our historic California mission. From Melvindale High School in Michigan comes this fine band representing the Midwestern United States. Freedom is an important word to the Order of Freemasons, and Al Malika Shrine Temple's float is fittingly called Freedom of Choice, and followed by the 17 riders of the Shrine's Mounted Patrol. The bakery and confectionery workers' recipe for freedom seems to call for a number of pretty girls. While the California State Exchange Club's recipe for a moment of freedom obviously calls for an iron and other items of drudgery to be left severely alone by the American housewife, and why not? It's a free country. From Long Beach come 140 musical emissaries from the city's high schools to march before the 1.5 million spectators lining the way. The sweepstakes winner, Diamond Jubilee, symbol of the 75 years Long Beach has been a city, paralleling the 75 years of the Tournament of Roses in Pasadena. An extraordinarily graceful float, marvelously realized in flowers. The United States, itself the world's greatest symbol of freedom, represented by the Minute Maid Company in this replica of the Unisphere Fountain at the New York World's Fair. As the parade stops a moment, a young fan gets Ernest Borgnine's autograph while Joe Flynn, his McHale's Navy sidekick, cools off on this warm New Year's Day. Yes, it's a great day for freedom, for sunshine, and for flowers. Riding on this Redondo Beach float, showing liberty enlightening the world, are another television star, John Russell, and 2 beauty queens from Redondo Beach and her sister city in Mexico, Ensenada. Roosevelt High School Rough Rider Band from Fresno, California, a major attraction at fiestas throughout the Golden State. This delicately wrought float of roses and orchids symbolizes our right to worship as we please, one of the most prized freedoms of this land of the free. 6 major religions of the world are represented by the stained glass windows of this open-air church. In quite a different mood, we see Papa Bear testing the water while Baby Bear fishes in the land of sky blue waters, the trophy-winning entry of the St. Paul Winter Carnival. The Carnival King and Queen look as if they'd like to trade our January weather for some snow and ice. The grand prize winner among commercial entries is this floral rendering by Occidental Life of California titled First Symbol of Freedom, the original Old Glory, with its 13 stars and stripes as made by Betsy Ross, portrayed by Nancy Davis, last year's Rose Queen. From Oregon comes the NYSA High School Band, 5 baton twirlers and 80 musicians who've been preparing for this day for 4 years. Santa Fe Springs entry, Justice for All, features one of its fair daughters in a Grecian dress and 2 others being weighed in the balance. All the way from North Carolina comes enthusiastic horseman Alan Burton, followed by George and Georgette Solis. Many of America's cherished freedoms are represented here. The Puritan symbolizes freedom of religion. The printer is turning out copies of the Bill of Rights. The U.S. Marine and the Lady Sportsman represent the right to bear arms. Behind them is the emblem of the National Rifle Association, sponsors of the float. Bonds for freedom. reminding us that the weapons of defense, missiles, planes, and ships are bought with defense bonds. Los Angeles County's entry is a timely one. This gallant figure leads the Glendora High School tartan band. Every man wearing the Royal Stuart tartan on his shoulders and a red fountain plume in his hat. Here comes San Bernardino's National Orange Show entry, a trainload of grapefruit and oranges. And the pretty orange queen to toss us a kiss. We must be living right. Stars of the Virginian, James Drury, Gary Clark, Doug McClure greet their fans across the nation. While right behind them, off the stern and rock-bound coast, the Mayflower takes its flight to religious freedom. This entry of the American Trucking Association shows the pilgrims on Plymouth Rock seeking their place of worship. A vision of tall Gothic windows surrounded by flowers. Pilgrims, Plymouth Rock, the Mayflower, imperishable names in America's story of freedom. Winning the Queen's Trophy is the entry of the Lutheran Laymen's League, Southern California District. A bookmark 55 feet long of crimson carnation petals mark the verse in the giant Bible, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Freedom of worship, something not everyone can take for granted. Burbank Police Boys Band, musical representatives of the entire San Fernando Valley this New Year's Day in Pasadena, leads Burbank's own float, entitled "The President Goes to the Prom." The empty rocking chair passes into the shadow. But who will ever forget the high school prom he attended last year? Certainly not the citizens of Burbank. Faith, hope, and charity. The city of Monterey Park and 5 of her loveliest daughters display these virtues toward all the world. While from San Antonio comes this representation of the Alamo, Texas' own symbol of freedom and courage that rings like a battle cry in America's consciousness. Television joins 96 million viewers with the state of Montana as it celebrates 100 years as a territory and 75 years as a state with its Montana Centennial Band. And its float, Big Sky Centennial. In front of the huge Indian headdress are 4 typical young ladies from the Treasure State, a cowgirl, a skier, an American Indian, and Miss Montana herself. The prize for best interpreting the theme, Symbols of Freedom, goes to this entry of the Centennial Rose Parade Committee, Freedom Bursts Forth, commemorating the Emancipation Proclamation. Surrounding the seated figure of Lincoln are 4 young ladies, each from a different sorority. And here's proof you'll find flowers anywhere in this parade. The Grand Marshals trophy shows the dove of peace conquering the sword of war. An omen, let us hope, for 1964. And the thoughtful entry from the Oddfellows and Rebeccas. And speaking of good-looking girls, how about these lassies from the Salvation Army? This is the 43rd time this dedicated band has appeared in the Rose Parade. This time leading their float entitled Freedom's Holy Light, the light that is shed all over the world by this great service organization. Here's an unusual and touching story in flowers, a prayer, freedom from forest fires, entered by the native sons and daughters of the Golden West and the Cooperative Forest Fire Prevention Campaign. Smokey the Bear and his woodland friends send up their moving plea. Now from the Huntington Sheraton Hotel, the coffee break that has set so many office slaves free from deadening routine. Well, hello, girls. It's good to see you. Especially you. Yes, fact, all the members of the Alhambra High School Band are thoroughly appreciated as they lead the city of Alhambra's entry liberty. That's Kim Carnes, California's 1963 Junior Miss, and this is Miss Liberty herself holding high the torch of freedom. Coming at you now are the four freedoms. Freedom from fear and from want. Freedom of speech and worship, embodied in an imaginative use of flowers and four lovely young ladies. An entry of the Florist Telegraph Delivery Association. And from the city of Sepulveda, we have Music of Freedom, played by four organists on four flower-covered organs. The day's last float presents one of the finest thoughts, freedom through service, by the Ladies' Auxiliary of the Veterans of Foreign Wars with their motto, honor the dead by helping the living. Four rare Appaloosa horses with riders from San Diego and South Pasadena. And music of the Pasadena High School Marching Band, winner over 92 competing musical groups, climaxes one of the most beautiful and memorable parades in the 75 years of Tournament of Roses history. As the great pageant that had begun with Dwight D. Eisenhower and ended with a high school band became history, a foreign-born girl thought of all the symbols of freedom she had seen this day and realized that the greatest privilege in the world is to live in a land where mankind's most cherished freedoms will never be allowed to die.